It's Bob Sansevere with Jeremy Fowler, Brian Murphy. I'm guest hosting here today. I'm new to the team, much like many of the players in the locker room. Jeremy, I've never seen a team that put 4 guys on the IR the same day. This team has been in bad shape. It's gotten much worse. How much worse can it get from here?
Oh, it can go a lot worse if they go 2-14. But you got to consider this is a team that's just trying to race to the finish right now. This move of putting four players on IR is pretty symbolic of that. Turns out those injuries were a little worse than we thought. Michael Jenkins has surgery on a torn meniscus. Tyrell Johnson needs surgery on a hamstring. It'll take him 6 months to recover from. That's probably his last game as a Viking. So, it's one of those things where it's a chance for some young guys to prove themselves. One guy that sticks out is 7th round wide receiver Stephen Burton. Christian Ponder has nobody to throw to now other than Percy Harvin. He needs somebody to emerge. Perhaps Bob Sansevere can fill in at receiver.
Yeah, that'll happen. Now, Brian, I was in the locker room, as were you, and I saw guys that I didn't recognize. You're around a team more than I am. Where they're 11 weeks into the season, there's guys in there that you have to ask, who is that?
There are a couple of safeties brought in. Jared Page is a veteran from Philadelphia, so somewhat recognizable. But yeah, there's a lot of and as Jeremy mentioned too, there's a lot of these youngsters that haven't really gotten any snaps or meaningful snaps that I think you're going to see a lot more out there just to get some evaluation in. Because at 2-9 right now, you need to take stock of where this roster is, who's going to be able to make an impact going forward. Because at this point, you kind of know what you're going to get from these veterans, and what you've gotten is 9 losses in 11 games. So I think Kyle Rudolph is coming back, the rookie tight end out of Notre Dame. He's coming back from a bruised thigh. I think you see him worked into the mix more, especially now with Jenkins down and a lot of options in the passing game. I mean, Ponder's going to need all the help he can get.
Well, where does he get the help? They have, Jeremy had a great stat. I think the only guy on the team with more than 10 catches is Percy Harvin. Of the receivers, they lost Michael Jenkins, who was supposed to be their deep threat. Where does Ponder go with it's still very much up in the air with Adrian Peterson too, right?
Well, one thing they have to utilize more is that screen game with the running backs. I thought even Gerhardt would maybe get 1 or 2 looks in the passing game. He didn't. Maybe Lorenzo Booker. I think you mentioned Rudolph. He's the guy that really needs to develop more of a chemistry with Ponder. I think they've built on it, and it's there a little bit. We've seen it in glimpses, but Shanko is still taking a bulk of the reps. He's probably not going to be back next year as a free agent. Rudolph's the future. They were picked 1 and 2 in the first 2 rounds of last year's draft. Those guys need to connect. At receiver, you got guys like Greg Camarillo. He's not going to be back. They have a kind of a logjam. Devin Romishudu's not going to be back. Stephen Burton, maybe that 7th round pick, is at least he has a shot as a young guy to try to connect with Christian. But those are a couple guys that stick out.
Now, it wasn't one of you two guys, but some media member said in there that some of these guys must be wearing Depends because of the way they soiled themselves on the field. There's 5 games left. I cover the '84 team where that team absolutely quit with 6 games left. This team doesn't strike me like that, but Brian, you have a better pulse of it than I do. You think some of these guys are ready to pack it in?
I think some of them, as Jeremy mentioned, are ready to get to the end, but I think they're pros. I mean, for the most part. I mean, there's some times where you see a little bit of uncomfortable, maybe jolliness in the locker room after a loss, but I think maybe gallows humor is where we're at this point. I don't see anybody laying down at this point. I just don't think they're improving at all. They're not performing at all. And I think they've been deluding themselves and been in denial the last several weeks that, they're 1 or 2 plays or 1 game away from being, 5-5 or 7-4. And that's just not the case. And the evidence has been mounting all year that that's not the case. So I think, Kevin Williams, came out at the halftime of the Oakland game and said, we just need to have fun. We need to play. We need to just forget about everything else. And I think that's sort of the prevailing attitude they need to have is, look, play for yourself, play for pride, play for the organization. Because at this point, laying down, they could go 2-14 still playing hard, but you can't lose effort. You can't lose your commitment because that's going to make it a miserable finish.
Now, you are also covering a story every bit as big as this, and it's the stadium. I don't understand the mindset of some of these legislators who don't get the fact that if the Vikings have made the proposal to take their income taxes from the players and visiting players, and also sales tax from any merchandise sold in a new stadium, and put it toward the bonds, paying off the bonds. How do you not see that if the team is not here, that money's gone anyway?
I think there's a lot of naivete out there. You hear a lot of these comments about, well, what's the hurry, and I don't think the Vikings will leave. And look, look, you can hold your nose and make the deal, or you can just not make the deal. But you can't not make the deal and expect the team to stay. I don't think you can reconcile those two positions. February 1, 2012 is when the lease is going to end at the Metrodome. It's been out there for years. Everybody's known that. Nobody's had the political will or the leadership to get it done. We're down to the last 6 weeks here. We're down to the last 2 months, 2+ months, and I just don't sense the urgency, and I don't know if people realize that you could wake up on February 2nd and be looking at a team that's planning their first mini camp at the Rose Bowl.
Now, these are elected officials at the legislature. What is your vote? 2 and 14, or you think they'll actually get another win or two in here?
I think they got at least another one. I think this is probably their best bet at home against Denver, even though Denver's been surging.
No?
No, I feel good. I feel fine. Don't be doing that. But I would say either Denver at home, maybe Washington on the road Christmas Eve. But other than that, they're looking at 3 and 13, which is right up your alley from '84.
I remember that '84 team. Now, Jeremy, I heard earlier you were predicting 7 and 9, and somehow they back into the playoffs when everyone else falls apart.
I think they'll clean up their depends in time to get a win in Washington. December 24th, McNabb will come back triumphantly to play against his old team. Ponder will get a slight ankle injury, only keep him out a half, and then McNabb will go in there for the win. There's a good chance they could win this one too. I would say at this point 4 games max. Saints, they ain't knocking out the Saints right now. They still have a couple playoff-bound teams they have to play at this point.
Well, I guess time will show us just how good that team will do over the final 5 weeks of the season. Thanks, fellas.